Rejection. Ooh, all of us deal with that. Why does it hurt your brain, our brains? Why does rejection hurt our brains when it's a part of life? Well, our favorite empowerment psychologist, Dr. Rosenna Bakari, is going to just tear that apart so we clearly understand that. I'm Stephanie Singleton, and let's just pop into it because cool, it's a lot of rejections happening out there that are really driving people nuts. I mean, really have people in despair. So let's just define rejection. I know that probably sounds elementary, but we need to really understand what we're talking about and what we're dealing with here.
Rejection is simple. It's a no, verbally or non-verbally, to a request, verbally or non-verbally. It's when you get a no and you wanted or was expecting a yes. It's a simple no. You don't get what you want.
Okay, so, but that's life. So why are we so flipped out? We all know we're not going to always get what we want. We all know that. Okay, so what about this no flips us out?
So there are a number of reasons, like we say with everything, but when we feel a sense of rejection, our brain perceives it in the same way that it perceives a physical threat. If you watch our brain waves on a cute little TV screen, like a gadget, it shows similar waves, brain waves, as if we were being physically threatened. And so it is, this sense of rejection is a physiological response. So there's a rejection, the no, and then there's the physiological response of rejection. So if we can learn to separate those more, then we feel ourselves, we show up in that gap with our own sense of personal agency. So that hearing the word no or receiving that no does not create some harsh physiological response within us. We talked earlier about unfamiliar, unsafe, or uncomfortable. When we hear the rejection, if we can keep it at uncomfortable, then we don't get to the unsafe. Whereas when it gets to the unsafe, that our brain starts to go haywire on us. And then we experience some moments, perhaps, of dysregulation where it feels painful.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that about the waves. So, because I think too, and I know I've done it. I think everybody out here has done it. You hear that no, and then it's like, then you go to, well, was I not good enough? Like you go to all of these things. So it may sound really simple, but what is a no? When people say no, what are they really saying?
So that's the whole thing about it going into a physiological response where it feels like a threat. Is because you just said it yourself, right? There's some narrative that goes with it. It's the meaning that you give to that no. It's when we start using the no as an evaluative statement about ourselves instead of receiving it with agency, personal agency that says, for example, this wasn't for me. Maybe next time I have some improvements to make, right? That's personal agency to receive it. So it's uncomfortable and it stings, but it doesn't feel unsafe, emotionally unsafe, much less physically unsafe and harmful to us. And so maybe it stings for an hour, maybe 24 hours, because it was a big job we really wanted, but it doesn't stay with us as a statement of our worth.
And I know on the previous video we did, you all should check that out. The link should be below, about really being able to distinguish between discomfort, unfamiliarity, and being unsafe. So really check that out. But you said something in that video that it was that if you can't say no, then you can't accept a no. So do you want to get into that a little bit?
Right. So how we position ourselves in the world, we come with the assumption that other people are positioned the same way. That's wrong. That's not the case, right? And so if we're positioned in the world or we don't feel like it's safe to say no, saying no has not been safe to you, it has meant that at least your perception has been, or your reality has been that someone's going to reject you, someone's going to be mad at you, someone's not going to like you, someone's going to punish you. So you've never learned that saying no is okay. So if saying no is not okay, it's not okay to give or to get. And so if you're uncomfortable saying no because it feels unsafe, when you hear no, it feels unsafe. Doesn't matter which side of the no you're on, it's the no, it's the rejection that feels unsafe. So we'll talk a little bit more later about how to get out of this, but clearly, as we practice boundaries and saying no and taking care of ourselves, then it's also easier to handle rejection.
So no, no, and boundaries pretty much go together.
They definitely can go together. Yes.
Yeah.
Because when we respect our own no, it's just easier to respect someone else's no. When we respect our right to take care of ourselves and show up in our fullness, then when someone else mirrors that to us, we understand it as that, nothing more. When I say no to you, it's not because I don't want to please you. It's that I understand that pleasing myself is more important in this decision. That's it. Maybe I'll say yes next time. Maybe I'll offer something, some alternative, but I'm doing what's best for me. And I'm not considering you above me. And that's okay.
Well, I know that's kind of hard for a lot of people to hear. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna say this, and you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it seems to me that men are more comfortable with saying no than women are. I really think on some level, and we don't have to get too deep in it, but I just really think on some level, women are more conditioned to say yes, right? To whatever, the expectation is for us to always be available. But, you know, and you know, just like especially in the workforce, I've the men say no in a minute, and no, and not qualify it, not feel that they have to qualify it, right? But if we as women say no, we got to give a whole story about why we can't do it. And for a man to no, boom, moving on. That's it. So do you find that in your practice that men are more prone to say no than women?
Yes and no, kinda, sorta. It depends. You have to consider that when oftentimes by the time I see men, many of them share common problems. So I won't say in my practice, but in the research, we certainly see that women are labeled as caregivers, and many tend to try and follow that traditional path in some way, even if they have non-traditional experiences, for example, in the STEM field or something else. Emotionally, when it comes to people they love and care about, they still tend to hold on to that traditional role as caregiver, which often means self-sacrifice.
Yeah, that whole thing of self-sacrifice. Yeah, they're saying that yes at your own expense. So now, having talked about that whole thing about saying yes at your own expense, when you talked about what rejection is, and that it's a denial of a request, right?
Of a request, not a person, but of a request. That's such an important distinction. It is the denial of a request, not a denial of a person.
Yeah, that is, yeah, you're right. That is definitely an important distinction because we do tend to take it personally, right? So, and it's a request, right? Verbal or nonverbal. A lot of times, I've done this, where it's like I've done whatever it is for whoever, right? And so when I come with a request, my expectation is, well, I did A, B, C, D, like whatever it is. And I don't tell this to the person, but in my mind, even as I'm coming with this request, right, my whole thing is, you need to say yeah. Like, I'm expecting to, yeah, I'm not even expecting a no, right? Whatever that thing is. And a lot of us do that, and especially if we're people who, well, I guess what they would call the people pleaser, like you just never say no, even though you want to say no, even though you yes, 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 yes. And then when you ask somebody who you always doing or whoever it is, right? And then they say no, you just like, what do you mean no? Right? And don't get to like something like my mother would say, I brought you into this world, like, how could you say no? So talk about rejection and expectation.
All right. So everyone has the inherent right, I'll say, to take care of themselves, not to take care of you. People are not for sale. That's so important to remember. People are not for sale. I don't care how high of a price you feel like you have paid for this person. I don't care if they came from your womb and you fed them for 21 years and paid their college tuition. They were never for sale. I don't care if you took care of them for 30 years and put food on their table and took them all around the world. People are not for sale. People are not for sale. So there is no amount of things that you could have done that make someone then owe you something because they were never for sale. So that's important to remember in your giving. So when if we say we're givers, then that means you give from the heart. Otherwise, you're just a manipulator. If you have expectations behind it, you're not a giver, you're a manipulator. So, and you're upset because your manipulation didn't work. Right. People don't owe us things. Now, people serve us according to their needs. This is so harsh for some people to hear, not according to your needs. People are always going to serve you from their needs, not from your needs. So again, it doesn't matter how much you have poured into their cup. They're going to pour into their cup some more. Right?
Yeah.
And so until you're ready. So in some sense, we say people are so selfish. They are. And we get to be selfish too. So you get to decide how you will remain in relationship with people based on what you have to give and what you deem you receive from that person. So all of those relationships are individual. There's no such thing as a 50-50 relationship. I gave this much, so now it's your turn to give X, Y, Z. Everything in a relationship is negotiable. Everything's negotiable. So if you made the bed on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so you assume that because we're both home that I'm going to make it on Saturday and Sunday, but you haven't negotiated that with me. You just expect me to get up on Saturday and make the bed because you've made it 5 days. It may be common sense to you, but it's not. I'm going to get up on Saturday and go play golf, and golf starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not making the bed. So you see, so that makes you like, well, how could you? That just makes sense. It's not about what makes sense. It's about how are people feeding into their own needs. And how are you showing up in relationship to that? And when you understand how people are serving their own needs, then you can figure out how to be a better negotiator with them. But if you're trying to negotiate with people based on your needs, that's when those negotiations often fail and create conflict. You have to negotiate with people based on their needs.
Yeah. We were talking earlier and you said that the whole thing about no, the pain that we feel with no really comes from the narrative we created about receiving that no.
Yes.
Can you please get into that for us?
Yes. So for example, I'll go back to the making the bed example. Now the no hurts because you believe that you married somebody or you're with someone who's selfish. I can't believe I'm with someone who's selfish. You can't even make the bed. All that is a narrative that you created. Someone is selfish. They're lazy. They don't care about you. They're not equal. Like, you create such a huge narrative. The bigger the narrative you create around it, the more the pain is, the bigger the pain is going to be.
Right? So it's not really the no. It's the rest of it is coming from here.
Right. All the narratives you give around it. You don't care about me. You dismiss me. You don't love me. You don't want me. I'm not enough. Right. I should not have done that. I knew I shouldn't have tried. All the narratives that you place around it, either about yourself or the other person.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here, right?
Play devil's advocate.
Yes, indeed, because it could, there are people who have done X, Y, and Z for other people. And I understand that whole thing about expectations. So that is so on point what you said. If you want to do something for somebody, make sure you're doing it because that's what you want to do. Because the minute you expect something in return, you're going to always be disappointed. You're gonna always be disappointed because how many times have we heard people say, well, I helped this person when they was down and they couldn't do this one little thing for me. But what I'm playing devil's advocate is sometimes, some people did get hurt. They really did get hurt. They really were betrayed. They really were done wrong. They really were stolen from, or like whatever the case may be.
That's not the same as rejection. Hold on, I'm gonna interject.
Okay.
Because that's not the same thing as rejection. Betrayal is not the same. So, this is good. I like this. So again, if we intermix those narratives, we come up with something different. If I'm now saying betrayal is rejection, it's not. Betrayal is betrayal. And rejection is rejection, right? It's not the same. I intentionally did harm to you. Is not the same as rejection. Right? I stole the money out your drawer and I was planning to replace it before you realized, like, that's rejection. That's stealing and harm. Rent was due on the 1st. But if we mix all those things together, because it goes with this narrative that we're creating, then something else happens. And it's difficult to separate it from rejection. But those are not rejection. Those are bad people doing bad things or good people doing bad things. But it's not rejection.
So when it is rejection, right? When people, because, a lot of us have been there. I've done this and I've done this for this person and I helped this person or I helped these people or I helped this organization, like whatever it is, right? And, how could they tell me no? It's hard to hear that the pain from that no is coming from me as opposed to their action, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why rejection is such an important invitation for us to go within and ask ourselves these questions. So they said, no, why does that hurt you so much? It could be, for example, that I am constantly recklessly giving of my time, energy, money, and resources. Right? And I have to look at who I'm giving to and why I'm giving in places that the return doesn't seem worth it. I have to look at that. Who am I being friends with? And how am I showing up? I get to look at that. That's an invitation for me to look at. So maybe next time I can do something different or show up differently. Why am I getting that rejection? Same thing as a job. Do I just keep sending out the same old resume to 100 people? I'll do better if after each rejection, I look at my resume, compare what I'm doing, and do something different. If I don't, I'm likely to end up with 200 rejections instead of just 100. So it's an invitation for us to decide, is there a way that we want to choose to show up differently to better the odds of us getting what we want from people?
Yeah, I like what you brought up about the whole thing about, how am I showing up and, who are my friends? Because, a lot of times you hear people say they have a friend that they're always doing something for, but every time I'm always doing something for this person. And every time I ask, they can never do. And so, yeah, that is an invitation to look, okay, well then, yeah, really what's going on inside of you that this is happening and you showing up like this. The other thing that you touched on, which, as I scroll through social media, as we all do, with the job market, right? With what's happening in the workforce, with a lot of people getting laid off, a lot of people out there now really looking for work, right? Either they don't have work or they're underemployed, and you just see people, I sent out 300 resumes, I'm not hearing anything, or I'm getting an interview and I'm going through, the fifth round in the interview, and then I don't get it. And people really getting in despair, and you really could understand that because it's just so much rejection, right? So again, what would you say to people? Because that's a real thing, right? It's like you gotta survive, you gotta live, you gotta try to have a roof over your head, and feed families, and yeah, what would you say?
That is an important discussion, and thank you for bringing that up, because I think we'd be remiss to have a conversation about rejection and not address the current situation in the job market. So thanks for bringing that up. And a couple of things come to mind. One is that rejection is a part of life, but I tell you, there's no bigger place that takes rejection than in the field of work and career. That is rejection haven, right? I mean, that is where you got to really grow some thick skin all the time to move up in the world in terms of our careers and our jobs. Just so happens. So that's one, you're not by yourself. So sometimes rejection is easier when it's shared. You're not the only one going through this, right? There are many people going through this who've been out of work suddenly this year and still trying to look for something that works for them. It's difficult, and I want to show compassion to those people. It's really difficult, of no choice on your own. Nothing could have prepared you for this. And so I want to approach that with a lot of respect and dignity for those people looking. But then the other piece is, still, when you receive these rejections, it's an opportunity, an invitation to look at how could you be better at presenting, pitching, showing up in these spaces. What could you do differently? So sometimes when we receive rejection, if all we do is feel the sting of the rejection, we end up repeating. We're sending the same resume. We're knocking on the same doors. We're not doing anything differently. So we keep getting the exact same outcome because we keep doing the exact same thing. It's an invitation to look and ask ourselves, how can we show up differently? Sometimes it's little things. Am I sending my resumes in the late afternoon instead of the early morning? Maybe let me try to fix that. May mean nothing. I don't know. I'm saying think about doing something different that may move you further along. Did I ask anybody for feedback on the rejection? Am I trying to make these pitches warmer by asking for a referral before I send something there? So between these rejections, how are you looking for self-improvement to show up better in these negotiations? Are you calling or just sending out 100 cold resumes to people? The whole thing is that rejection is an invitation for us to see how we can be better, because what we're doing is not who we are. It's just what we're doing. Don't attach to who we are. What I'm doing right now is looking for a job, but that's not who I am authentically. I'm a person who wants to grow. I'm a caring person. I'm an expert in this, blah, 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 blah. But what I'm doing is trying to find employment. They're not the same. So their rejection, the rejection is to your pursuit of employment, is not a rejection of who you are. It's so important to make that distinction.
I'm so glad you said that, because, and I don't know, maybe this is another video, because a lot of us have really made what we do us. So when we do get that rejection, there's a rejection of us, and then we get smaller and smaller as if we get more. I mean, if you're sending out 300 resumes, and a lot of people are doing that, really do it, and you're not hearing anything, or you're hearing rejections, and you have really meshed who you are with what you do, like that's how you defining yourself with what you, that's something, that's some real despair here. But I think, at the same time, to be fair, we've been conditioned that way,
right?
If you don't work, you have no worth, right? So that rejection, it really becomes monumental if you really, it's crushing. It can be crushing.
Right. And so if I attached myself to that, it may be, and I've done this in the past in starting my entrepreneurship, right? It may be that I'm so attached to who I see this as who I am. It's like, no, I'm a good author, blah, 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 Then when I do that, I'm less likely to see the ways in which I can improve, because I have attached it to me, and I am rejecting this criticism of me, not my words or not my work. So that's one issue. And one encouragement to detach and separate the two. Your pursuit of a job is not who you are. Your expertise is not your pursuit of a job. Right? Separate those things out. And when you do that, you also will probably get better at what it is that you want to do. Because if you're sending out 300 jobs, I'm saying, which one did you want? which one did you want? Because now and I know for in many ways it is a numbers game, but it's also a game about intentionality. What do you want? Be clear about what you're seeking, because it's likely seeking you. But if you're unclear and you're just shooting out everywhere, then it's hard for anything targeted to come back to you. So I personally wouldn't recommend someone sending out 300 resumes, right? That sounds like an act of desperation. Get still, get steady, get alignment, so that what you seek can find you.
Yeah, that's it, because that's where a lot of people are, right? A lot of people are desperate. I mean, that's a real thing. Yeah, but I do get that, because I think a lot of times, no matter what it is, we just get caught up in the grind, or we get caught up in, whatever the norm is. And then when we don't look inside, we forget that we have a lot of creativity. We have a lot of innovation. Maybe there were some dreams that, we was just working whatever it is, but maybe there were some dreams that we really had. Maybe we really want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe we even played with, doing consulting or something like that. But if we don't look at what do I really, really want, maybe just stop for a minute and really
we have to get away from desperation. We must walk away from desperation. What you pursue from desperation is unlikely to fulfill you. So that's why I said you got to get still. You got to get still, get out of panic mode. Right? That's not easy to do.
No, it's
That's
not.
a different kind of work. This internal work ain't no joke. It's for grown-ups. Right? Gotta learn how to stand in the fire and not get burned.
Yeah. No, this is a thing. We probably want to do a video on that. Just the whole concept of how we just wrap ourselves and define ourselves by what we do, as opposed to us actually just being beings, being real beings on this planet is the worth, and all this other stuff is something else. So that might be another video, but I'm really glad that we really touched on this with this rejection. The no is the no, and that's it. It's not that we're less than. It's not that all that other stuff comes from our stuff. It's a time, like you said, to just stop and look in. And no, it's not, I would say this, that no is not always permanent, as I've seen just in my life, right? Once I got to a certain point, it was like, that might be no for now, right? Because I'm going to always come back.
Right.
I don't go with the first no. It's like, okay, all right, I'm going to come back though. And then I come back, and people who work with me know this for sure. I'm going to come right back, and I get that second no, and I'm like, okay, all right. But when I get the second no, me and that other person, they know I'm coming back. It's like that, oh God, how long is it going to be before she come back with this same thing, right? And sure enough, I'm going to come back that third and fourth time. Now, after, the fifth time, I might be like, okay, this is a bust. But the whole point is that I'm going to come back, because that may not be permanent. No.
Right. We have to develop a higher tolerance for rejection in order to reach our full potential. If we're not opening ourselves up for rejection, or to rejection, or to the possibility of rejection, there's a pretty good chance we're not going to reach our full potential. Your full potential does not lie within your comfort zone of complacency. So we have to, when we are afraid of rejection, when our tolerance for rejection, it can be so low that it shrinks us into invisibility. And then we wonder why we're not being seen.
Wow. Woo. That really is something to end on right there. Think about that. You say that again for the people in the back, because that's yeah.
You don't want your risk tolerance to be so low, your rejection tolerance to be so low that you shrink yourself into invisibility.
Yeah, because the bottom line is, like you said at the opening, is rejection is a part of life. None of us are going to get what we want all the time. None of us. So yeah, this is part of life, not a judgment on us and who we are. It's just, that's life. So with that said, is there anything else you want to just give us, some more tidbits, for us to put in our pocket and take with us today?
I just want to remind people that 7 Exits, Leave Behind What No Longer Serves You, is now on sale. Go to 7exits.com. The book is life-changing. These topics in there and many more. So just want to remind people of that.
Yes, indeed. Get your pre-orders going. Go to 7exits.com. And it's also on your website, rosennabakari.com. People go there. Let's get this book. Let's start reading. Let's start having some real serious discussions as we already are. But we want to also converse with you all out there as well, because we're all people and we're all going through it. So having said that, if you didn't do so, hit that like button, give us that click, subscribe, share, because somebody out there really needs to hear this. Okay? So, everyone, thank you for joining, and we will see you next week.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.